It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back. We are joined by Lawrence Curtis, and you might recall we did the show there, I think his name was Mr. Berry, about Steve Bannon's porn and meth house. Lawrence Curtis is the tenant who moved in right after Steve Bannon moved out. Mr. Curtis, are you there?
I sure am.
Okay, tell us about yourself. Who is Lawrence Curtis?
Well, I'm a man that's been thrust into, it seems, kind of a national scandal here. But prior to all of this, I've been working professionally for 20 plus years as an underwater cinematographer and conservation filmmaker, based out of South Florida, but traveling a lot to work with issues related to dolphins and whales and aspects of how it's not really necessary and quite cruel to put them in captivity, but also art projects to inspire people on the oceans, and hopefully we can, through the inspiration of art and science, better protect them. So that's been my passion and my focus pretty much all my adult life. I'm a relatively nice guy and treat people with kindness, and through all of this that we're about to discuss, have kind of found that in order to fight apathy, you have to stand on integrity. And,
with your underwater filmmaking, anything that we would recognize?
Well, I used to work freelance for really different kinds of broadcasters, usually as a cameraman for hire or a producer. Much of that work was a few years ago. I really haven't worked in broadcast so much in the last couple of years, and really focusing on art and science and work in planetarium type venues, immersive theater. I find it a kind of a better way to tell these stories and narratives. And getting to be 48 years old, I'm probably, don't want to do the hustle so much like a younger man's game as a camera operator or cinematographer. But if the right project is there, then I'll certainly take it on.
Yeah, I had a friend that was NYPD Harbor Aviation, and 48 to be diving every day. 48, that's a toll. Give us
well, I'm mostly free diving with the marine mammals, so that's a whole different kind of thing.
Yeah. So
but
now
it's a passion.
No, I could imagine. Yeah. Now, so give us an idea. Now, you just innocently moved into this house down in, is this the one in Coconut Grove?
Yeah, it sure is. Opechee Road, North Coconut Grove. It's a nice neighborhood. It's the homes there range from $1 million to $2 million, and though I certainly wasn't looking to purchase there, I was moving from the Gulf Coast of Florida really to be closer to my girlfriend and also some of the activities, the art and culture of Miami. So found Coconut Grove to be a perfect mix of everything that appealed to me, and safe neighborhood, seemed to be very alert neighbors, and, it's a sailing community, and has still that little bit of bohemian aspect from the 60s, which I kind of liked. But yeah, it took me a while to find a place to live, and so after about 3 months of searching, found this house, and it really kind of ticked off all the boxes of the things that I needed. 3 bedrooms, a pool, Coconut Grove funky in a good way, and moved in, met the owner's real estate agent, and she began to kind of allude to some activities that the previous tenants were doing, and that they were very grateful. The owners were very grateful that I was, interested, and then moving in once I did sign the lease. But she kind of started saying that they were just very bad people, and the owners had a huge problem. They had ruined the house, basically destroyed it, thousands of dollars worth of damage. and that the maintenance man had to clean it up, and fresh paint everywhere, or in most places, as it turns out. In a lot of ways, I just kind of chalked that up, as I did with a lot of things that were kind of coming out from different people: the service warranty guy, the maintenance man, the handyman, the bug exterminator guy, all relaying these pretty horrendous stories about what the activities were. And it's one of those things where apathy kind of sets in. You go, wow, that was someone else's problem. Well,
right.
I'm here now, going to have a fresh start at it, like the house, sign the lease, let's, move in and start my new chapter over in Coconut Grove.
And so when you were doing the walkthrough, did you notice any signs of any kind of deterioration or damage?
Yeah, there were, the few of the things that really stood out to me was on the back of the house and on the front of the house, there are these, very nice French door type doors that kind of lined the whole back, part of the house, a lot of great natural light coming in. And all of them had, really remnants of locks or padlocks that had been on there. And so I inquired about that, and their real estate agent said that, they had this house on lockdown and these were padlocks all over. There was some damage that they had painted over just from having those locks on the doors. And then there was kind of a funky smell, but, when you're renting, beggars can't be choosers. So it was something that, they were kind of covering up with air freshener and stuff. But, in the world of renting, you kind of deal with older houses. I mean, this was a house, I believe it was originally built in the 40s, or maybe even earlier. And, various different updates here and there. I did note the bathtub, this infamous bathtub that they basically painted over. And I remember making note of that and saying, geez, that's kind of a shoddy job. How about, I'm fine with going in halves and let's replace this thing. It also was very awkward to get into. It had a couple of steps, and I'm a relatively big guy at 6'3", 200 pounds. And so it was like, this isn't going to really be that great. And she said, well, okay, they'll consider that. And again, I didn't really put much thought into it. Didn't really notice much of anything else aside from those things I just mentioned until later when things were, pointed out to me. One thing notably is in the kitchen, there were these large circular stains on I guess it's kind of a marble floor. And I had inquired about that, and they said, that's from the buckets of acid that were found in the house. And of course, that sounds bizarre, but doing a walkthrough, you don't really, you're really focused on, at least I was, how is all my furniture going to fit into this place? Being kind of a quasi, thinking about how my living space would be, and you're visualizing things like that. So these other little details certainly aren't red flags, until much later.
Now the padlocks, these were like padlocks on the inside, like to keep people in, or padlocks to keep people out?
They were inside. They were on, there's a gate that goes into a courtyard, and that, has a regular knob lock and a deadbolt. And then on the upper deck to the porch, they were all on the inside. So, which I don't, I haven't been living in the world of speculation and all this time, and certainly don't now, but they were definitely locks that were, in the inside, whether they were a key lock or a combination lock, I don't know, but you could tell that there were the two plates that were on the door and then on the door frame that had they were recessed,
sure,
into the wood. And then of course they just painted those over, and as time kind of went on, and I and my girlfriend were asking, questions about, what was going on here. They had started to mention things about filming pornography, that men were coming and going at all hours of the night. A neighbor had mentioned that there were, fights in the middle of the night, screams coming from the house, and that the female tenant was scared. And so she had put in all those locks. There was also some signs of cameras, like monitor camera mounts outside of the house that, made me concerned only in the sense of this seemed to be a very safe neighborhood. And, it isn't a neighborhood that's got, bars on the windows or anything like that. But obviously it was the beginnings of the signs of something unusual was going on at the place.
And who was telling you this? The neighbors?
Well, at first it was the owner's real estate agent,
right.
And then the wife. And she really, when she would relay a few things, she just said, "Oh, I just don't want to talk about it. I'm just, so grateful that you're moved in now, and we just don't want anything to do with those people." That she just didn't want to talk about it. But she had definitely said that, what she and, of course, the neighbors later across the street had said that, they had formed a neighborhood committee to try and do something to evict the tenants. The owners were living in Costa Rica at the time, and, I'm not here to place judgment. They seemed to be pretty indifferent on what was going on there. The neighborhood committee also had a local Miami-Dade police officer that was kind of overseeing some of the things, but I guess with Florida renters laws, it's the owner's responsibility. But there was definitely concern from the neighbors. One neighbor did say that they would often have photo shoots in her front yard, girls in bikinis, and but again, men and women coming and going out of the place. There was some mention early on about kids at the house, and that's when the owner, the wife, said that she just didn't want to think about what that meant. And of course, you just kind of go, "Oh my God, that's horrible. I'm sorry you had to deal with this." But that was then. This is now. I'm living here now, so that's, just you kind of carry on.
Now, they mentioned that the woman who lived in the house was scared. This is Steve Bannon's wife?
That was what some people had told me, the neighbors had told me. And one of the journalists from a local Miami paper had, after a couple of months, I got curious myself. And so I looked to see what kind of police reports had been documented or any kind of activities. Because, I started kind of putting two and two together and said, geez, what was going on here? And so there were several reports that were listed. I only found maybe 3, but apparently there's like 10 different reports of domestic violence, an accident that happened outside the house, and then apparently Diane had a boyfriend after a certain amount of time who I guess who had been released out of jail or prison or something, and so there was some aspect of maybe that was him, and she was scared, and therefore that was the reasoning they gave behind how she had to have the house on lockdown.
Now, how did you go about obtaining these police reports?
Oh, it was just basically a search online, and then going onto the Miami-Dade website, public domain, public access.
Now, you said that the neighbors were mentioning that the kids were coming and going from the house. Were these kids with parents or adults supervising them?
I couldn't say one thing or another, and I don't know if they knew. They just knew that it was upsetting to know that there were kids there when these activities were happening. Clearly from the get-go, they said it was a drug house, and, again, people coming and going and parties at all hours of the day and night, and that kids were, witnessed being there. They saw that kids were there, and, of course, that throws up another red flag for the neighbors, what's going on here. And so I think that was what kind of was the catalyst for them to say we need to get something to be done here to get these tenants out. But again, that was before I ever, showed up. That was all things that I had been told.
Right. Now, what about when you were living there? Did anybody come knocking on the door, say, "Hey, I'm looking for drugs," or anything like that?
Well, they didn't ask specifically for that, but I did have, I did have one woman come to the door specifically that asked for the previous tenants by name. At the time, I didn't, it didn't set off any kind of signs for me other than the fact that I'd been receiving a tremendous amount of mail addressed to the previous tenants. So I was kind of familiar with their names. Sometimes boxes would come that I would obviously return to sender and send back. And she did come to the door looking for them. And I'm not one to place judgment, but she looked, I guess the street term is tweaky, very distraught, scantily clad, and saying, well, what am I going to do? And I was very polite to her, and I said, listen, I moved in a while ago, and I don't know them. I don't know where you could track them down, but please, don't come back here again. I'm living here now. And then she actually kind of lunged towards the door as if she was in disbelief. And I said, no, please, please don't come back. They're not here. I'm living here now. And then she just sort of stood there in shock and said, well, what am I going to do now? And I said, I'm really sorry. God bless you. I hope you have hope it all works out, but, please don't come back.
And what time of day or night was that?
I remember.
Was that day or night?
That was during the day.
During the daytime, okay.
That was during the day. And I do remember, I recall, my girlfriend was there at the time, or then girlfriend was there at the time, and I went back into the house and I said, oh boy, we're, looks like we're starting to get people looking for the previous tenants. And it was at that time, and I said, geez, moving, nobody likes to move. And it was when I started kind of thinking, geez, is this really a safe place? Are we going to start getting people, looking for a party? Is there a potential for people kind of, coming in to break in? I keep all of my film equipment there. Had converted one of the bedrooms into a studio of sorts. And so I was kind of concerned for potential theft or, a little bit of my safety. And that, again, you put in the recess of your mind and just kind of go, okay, well, I just need to carry on. And I informed the owners that this woman had come to the door, and she said, oh, I'm so sorry. I let us know if it ever happens again, which it never did.
Now you mentioned you were getting mail there. What was the name on the mail that was showing up?
Well, the name on the mail was Steve Bannon, Diane Clausen, but mostly Steve. Things, obviously it's a federal offense to open mail, so I don't open other people's mail. But, from the letter or from the outside of the envelope, it was from the city of Miami, bill collectors, Bank of Ireland, which I guess is an offshore bank account or a Bank of Ireland. A few random kind of strange catalogs, but, everyone gets on a strange mailing list sometimes, but they were kind of like Latina Fredericks of Hollywood type things, which we kind of got a chuckle out of, just feeling, God, this is, who are these people? This is just so bizarre. But as I mentioned earlier, I, wrote return to sender, but they kept on coming, and then, they just kind of pile up. Talked with my postal delivery lady and said, hey, how do I resolve this problem, because it's choking up my mailbox here. But yeah, that was just didn't think much of it, but it just added to this whole strange kind of bizarre tale.
The last gentleman I had on, I interviewed about this, he said that there were sex toy catalogs. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't consider them sex toy. They were more like I said, kind of Latina, Fredericks of Hollywood type lingerie catalogs. I didn't go looking through the catalog, but outside of it, you could clearly tell what the catalog was. So.
And it was in Spanish?
Maybe Jason did his research and looked up the company.
It was in Spanish? It was in Spanish?
No, it was just those were the models. And
Oh, gotcha.
I think the title may have been. I can't quite remember at this point, but I think the title was something like that.
Now, there came a time when you were concerned. I think you felt you were being affected by chemical smells or odors in the house.
Yeah, the mystery just, as they say, the plot thickens, and so the mystery just kind of, pretty much soon after I moved in, I started getting symptoms of basically skin irritation, irritability, sinus problems, headaches, things that were extremely unusual. But really, I kind of chalked a lot of that up to moving to Miami. It's a lot of traffic there. It's a bit of a headache in itself. Miami has some great, wonderful qualities to it, but there's a tremendous amount of traffic, and so I just kind of thought it was that, or maybe stress from some troubles in a personal relationship, but then they kind of persisted, and was getting vertigo, dizziness during different times of the day, kind of hard aspects of breathing, some lung issues, rapid heartbeat, kind of moved right into depression for a long time. And I did go to my physician and try to make sense of it. And, it was really, again, sort of moved into the area of, well, you're under a lot of stress, and what's causing the stress? Is it work? Is it relationship? Did not really put anything into this is the house that's causing this. That wasn't really directed until much later. And I would travel a bit. I'd go off to conferences or filming expeditions, and the symptoms kind of went away after a week or two. And, I was in my element filming, would come back and then just basically collapse for days. Really wouldn't be able to rebound being at the house. And that was quite concerning to me. And so, obviously later, as I started doing some research on contamination and symptoms, it was just like a point-by-point list. But yeah, those symptoms really kind of happened very early on. But again, like I said, after I'd leave and I'd feel better. And it still is in question right now. I've got an unfortunate few years to have to do some more health assessments and neurological assessments to see if there's long-term or deleterious effects to it. Memory loss, which I kind of chalked up to being 48 years old, but was kind of just trying to make sense of things. But it was so far out of the realm of my knowing, this aspect of the drug culture or contamination. I just didn't put two and two together like that. Call me naive, but just thought that it was other things attributed to it.
Now, you said that you would leave town for a while and you'd feel better. Was there anybody staying at the house while you were gone that was affected by this also?
Well, luckily not. My girlfriend would come over periodically and, stay the night, and we'd often have she and her kids over for dinner. She did report, after, I guess, maybe a year being there, she's very fit and very active and loves to spin and run, and she started complaining about some breathing issues. And, we didn't know at that time if there was any kind of a connection. Of course, she's fine now. She did go to her physician and got a full, good positive report on her health. We were quite concerned about her children. And as it turns out that they weren't at the house long enough. I was there for 2 years, pretty much almost to the day. And so, she was there helping me as an assistant with my work, but also, coming over and visiting, and so we were very, very happy to know that she wasn't affected, at least on the surface, in the way that I have been.
How about pets?
No, no pets. I mean, she has a dog, and I think once or twice the dog would come over. there's a nice backyard for it to kind of romp around in.
Okay.
But that wasn't part of my lease agreement to have pets there. And I travel too much to have my own critters, so unfortunately.
Okay, so you went ahead and you did some kind of testing. How'd you go about doing that?
Well, really kind of the time frame of all this is that through the course of being there, and I was talking with the handyman who was telling me all these stories. He was the guy that actually cleaned the house up, and he was the one that said, yeah, they were big buckets of acid. The bathtub was just absolutely ruined by acid. He confirmed that he was the one that painted it up. There were trash bags full of rags. The service warranty guy that came to work on the oven would not come into the house. He refused. My girlfriend was trying to make an appointment. He said, I will not go back to that house if the same people are there. And, she said, let me assure you that, it's a nice guy who's moved in now. When he came in, he's the one that really told me all these stories. And it just went from bizarre to, crazy to unbelievable. And then the orc and bug man would tell me a lot of stories. And so, putting two and two together, you just kind of think, oh, God, I've got to deal with this. So we did start thinking in terms of, boy, maybe they were using meth in the house. And I did purchase some home test kits that are used by police, law enforcement. And I just kind of sat on them, just had them. And I guess in many ways, I just didn't want to see what they would come out with. But it wasn't until, I believe it was March, when Jason, actually, I had contacted him and said, listen, I've got some things going on here, and I'm too close to the story. And he and I had met when I was doing some work documenting Deepwater Horizon in Louisiana, and I was familiar with his work. And so I felt that he would be a good, good person to maybe help out in some way. But he had come to Miami, and I had arranged for the owner. There was some work that needed to be done on the house, and the owner came over and looked at the things that needed maintenance. And I just basically asked him, I said, well, explain to my friend here, Jason, ask him or tell him what this crazy story is with the previous tenants. And he went into extreme detail and confirmed right in front of me that, yes, it was a meth house. And of course, I just stood there, listened, and that night we conducted at least 5, I guess, to 6 tests in the kitchen, in the bathroom, in a couple of different spots in the guest rooms. But the main areas were the kitchen. I focused on the kitchen and the bathroom, the master bathroom, and it was off the chart positive for methamphetamine contamination. It was that evening that I left the house, checked into a hotel, and I've been basically without a home since then, traveling, staying with friends, but basically kind of a man without an address. And then I got another third-party company to come in and do an assessment, and it was off the chart for cocaine contamination and signs of methamphetamine, which obviously confirms, as does the admission from the owner, who said that, the house was, on basic lockdown. They had black cloths that were covering all the French doors. He explained that's why the house was had the padlocks. He had met Mr. Bannon several occasions. He was indeed living at that house, though he was traveling for work. But he confirmed that he was there, and he went to the house to talk with him directly. So, all of this kind of came out.
Let me ask you this.
And, of course, it was last year. Yeah, sir.
Yeah,
sure.
When he went to meet Steve Bannon there at the house, was this a prearranged meeting, or he just showed up at the door and he was there?
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I think they had a they needed to check on the house or something, or rewrite the lease. I'm not quite sure what the reason is or how they had set that up, but he said that he was there on at least 4 occasions that he came back to the country to check on the house and talk with the tenants.
Besides the landlord, did any of the neighbors say they saw Steve Bannon there?
Yes, at least one of the neighbors said that she saw him walking around with a dog, at different times of the day. He was very friendly, but, described him as he was. A lot of people in the neighborhood just didn't want to get involved. And, as I was moving out, a few people that I hadn't met previously that were living down the road would come up and say, oh, my gosh, we've read all these stories in the Washington Post, and we're so sorry that, this is happening. Word had gotten out that I was moving out, and made me feel good that the neighbors liked me. But they would say, yeah, we saw him all the time. And I know there was a discrepancy in some of the reports on, when this all kind of came out, I guess back in February, it was under the investigation of voter fraud.
Right.
And did he live there, or was he just, on the name of the lease? But definitely, 1 to 2 neighbors confirmed that he was there. And then obviously the owner, Carlos, had admitted that he had met with him on several occasions.
And what about the handyman and the Orkin man? Did they recognize Steve Bannon as living there?
At that time when I was talking with them about the previous tenant, it was unknown. I didn't know, Steve Bannon other than the name on the mail. But they definitely had mentioned the heavyset man at the house, the tenant. And in on both occasions with the on all 3 occasions actually, with the service warranty guy, the Orkin man, and the handyman, they said that the heavyset man offered women and or drugs in lieu of payment for the services, which the handyman, Felix, was horrified by. He didn't go into any details when my girlfriend was around, because he's quite a nice gentleman, but went into details on this occasion that he came over to paint. I wanted a couple of rooms painted, and so I had hired him, and he went into all these details about the man that was there and what all he had to deal with while he was working on the house, and then obviously whenever he had to clean up the mess.
Now, we know that Steve Bannon's ex-wife lived there. I think that's everyone agrees with that. But didn't she also have a boyfriend that was living there on and off? Now, were they all 3 there at the same time?
This is where I'm not one to judge, and but there are bizarre things, and that was pretty common knowledge apparently from all the people that interacted with the tenants. There's a police report that I guess it was the boyfriend who had a car wreck, went off, they had a huge fight apparently, and that again is, documented in police reports. Diane did come to the door once looking for a piece of mail. I didn't answer the door at that time. My girlfriend did, and she said she was looking for a credit card or something that would, potentially show up.
Right.
So she returned to the house. But again, people can live in weird, bizarre ways, and I, again, can't judge.
No, we're not here to judge.
We're a very bizarre story of.
Yeah, we just want to get the facts. There are witnesses that saw them all 3 living there at the same time, not back and forth or on and off. That they were all 3 there. One neighbor definitely said that. As
I was moving out, the day that I was moving out and had the moving truck there, she kind of pulled me aside and said, yeah, here's what I've, here's what I witnessed, and definitely said that it was, not only that, but also the handyman had mentioned that Diane had a girlfriend, romantic relationship. And that just was, again, one of these, I didn't know who these people were at that time. And it's just like, wow, what a weird, crazy thing. And then a lot of people just said, well, that's Miami. And it's like, well, why am I living in Miami then?
Well, I guess, when you get up to 3, who's counting at that point, right? Well, let me ask you a question now. What about the porn? Now, you say
exactly. You kind of.
Who told you there was porn, that they were filming porn? Is an eyewitness that they were filming porn in the house?
That was the neighbor across the street, the real estate agent for the owners, and the wife, the owner, had said that that's what they had been told. The handyman said directly that they were filming. The Orkin Bugman, or exterminator rather, said that he saw filming of sex acts in the house when he would come over to do his work. And in some cases, they tried to enlist him. And he kind of relayed this, the exterminator relayed this almost with a sense of glee, like, oh man, get a load of this. And of course, I'm listening to it going, this is as bizarre as possible. The mention of pornography and filming was very early on. And so that's kind of what I had just, accepted what was going on in the house. It was a house used, for filming blue films, pornography. Of course, no one wants to live in a place like that. I'm not a hippie or anything, but I burned a lot of sage and tried to have positive mojo in the house and just kind of carry on with my life. But yeah, that was reported directly to me by, again, the owner, the real estate agent, all the service people that would come to the house.
Now, have you been interviewed by anybody else about this?
Yeah, I sure have. The Wall Street Journal, the ABC World News 2020. I went to New York back in, I guess it was late July. Jason, of course, with Share Blue and Raw Story, yourself right now. And I've had the Washington Post contact me, though I did not do an interview with them. And then the local Miami News Times, I had talked with, but not in a formal interview. And that was fairly early on, after February. After February, when the story broke in the Washington Post about this infamous bathtub and the acid, that's when, all hell kind of broke loose. There was a lot of reporters outside the house, people that claimed to be FBI agents. The owner had told me that they were interviewed by the FBI and that I shouldn't be surprised if they knock on the door because they, legally needed my approval as well as the owner's approval to look at any kind of signs for the house. Again, the Wall Street Journal has been covering this story for a very long time, as has Brian Ross and ABC 2020. Those reports have not come out because as soon as Bannon resigned, they said that it was kind of a non-story, but they would keep me posted. Again, I did fly to New York and did an on-camera interview, which was difficult for me because I'm not on a vendetta, or I don't have any kind of an agenda here and against Bannon, or I try not to get involved in things like this. I just want to do my art and do my documentaries and live a good, clean life. But I decided that, this was an important enough piece of the entire puzzle that to be on camera was part of the necessary process for this. So, yeah, there's been quite a lot of interest from a variety of news sources.
Now, did the FBI ever talk to you?
No.
Okay. And now what about, since this has come out, have you received any kind of threats or anything like that?
No, not personally, but after the Washington Post original article came out, I did start receiving a couple of pieces of mail that were in postcard form, so they weren't in an envelope, but they were basically hate mail towards Steve Bannon. And that was concerning for me, and that's when I kind of started the process of, oh boy, I need to, get out of here. I was unaware of everything until last year. I had actually returned from a filming expedition, and I guess it was, the timeline's a little off. I think it was maybe October when the owner had mentioned to me and said, hey, have you been watching the news? And I said, no, I'm blissfully in the middle of the South Pacific, unaware of American news, what's going on? And he said, well, do you know who the new campaign manager for Trump is? And I said, nope. And he said, it's Steve Bannon. And I said, well, geez, that name is familiar. I said, I get his mail. He said, yeah, that's the previous tenant. And then really from that moment on, it was, press outside the house. The neighbors had been, they had reported to me that A guy in a suit was talking with them, saying that he was an FBI agent. People may have come to the gate, but again, I was suffering from crazy insomnia, and my nights and days were mixed. So during the morning hours, I was, finally was able to sleep. Plus, my doorbell didn't work, and so I was kind of unaware until I would go out to the front gate and see, certain business cards, from actually ABC, media news, and various different local news sources, and just was like, God, I don't want to live in a place where I'm going to be bombarded with this kind of stuff. So it was when I started getting in my mind, okay, I need to start looking for a new place to live. But obviously it wasn't until the owner confirmed that they were making methamphetamine at the house that I left.
But never a card from the FBI?
No, not me personally. A couple of the neighbors did, though.
Okay. So now, is there anything I forgot to ask you? Anything you want to add to this story?
Ed, I don't really know at this point. One thing is that I'm just really grateful that I'm feeling better. I know a lot of people are concerned and very interested in this aspect of the story. I think that whatever it's worth, I'm, again, just this piece of the puzzle. And I know there's a bigger story to it. Looking back, and now where I've, have my mental capacities back, there was a time when I wouldn't be able to have a conversation like this with you because I had memory loss and absence of trying to pick the right words. I am happy to report that I'm feeling better. But what I do know is that there has been an ongoing investigation by the FBI and other law enforcement agencies connecting this to human trafficking. And again, I'm not on any kind of an agenda here. If I am, the only thing that I ever wanted out of me coming forward with this is that I couldn't, in my own conscience, be able to allow the owners to rent this place or sell it to unsuspecting people. There is, we live in a world of apathy, and too many people just kind of turn away from something. And I'm not saying that I'm any better than anyone, but I do have to stand on integrity. I stand on the truth. And hopefully through the course of this, something can be revealed, and maybe it will reflect on what type of a person those people are that were the previous tenants to this house.
How are you on good terms with the landlord? Is there any litigation back and forth with you and him trying to recover your damages for your health?
Well, I had been thinking long and hard about this, but I do have a legal team that are looking into, I'm away right now in the Pacific. I don't have I don't have urgent plans to return to Miami, certainly. So I'm focused on my work, but there is a course being taken in terms of some legal action. And also the owners did not give me back my deposit. And in it was quite ridiculous that they were nickel and diming me out of, $10 per nail hole. And it just kind of burns you a little more because they know exactly what was going on at that house, and they didn't do anything about it. And in other states, a house that's contaminated with methamphetamine and cocaine residue is demolished. It has to be torn down. And they have disregarded my health. They've disregarded the health of anyone that had gone to that house, and they continue to disregard. And I think that you do have to stand on your integrity and do the right thing. And so, yes, I can't say that there's, friendly terms. I did let the wife, Audrina, know that I was very disappointed in them and that they knew that it had been used as a meth house, and they rented it to me anyway, which she basically said, oh, we knew nothing about it. But we know for a fact that her husband did, and he admitted it to me and another party. And so there's where the record is on that.
Now, when I had spoken to Jason Brad Berry, he also mentioned, I was even going to ask you about the human trafficking. Now, how did this come to your attention that they're investigating human trafficking?
Well, that came through a few different sources. I can't really go into too many details about that, but law enforcement, as well as some of the journalists from mainstream media that have been covering aspects of human trafficking, houses very much similar in characteristics to this in Coconut Grove, all the way from Palm Beach County to down in the Florida Keys. So this was, again, a piece of the puzzle of a bigger picture. And they basically said these are all the signs of things that we've been investigating already, with the characteristics of methamphetamine manufacturing and prostitution and pornography.
Now, and
all areas in which people make a tremendous amount of money doing.
And these other houses, are these houses that were owned or run by people connected to the Bannons and their friend there, the other boyfriend? Was there a nexus there?
You know, I can't say specifically one way or another. That would live in the world of speculation. Plus, I know that there's an ongoing investigation. So if, however I would present any kind of thing like that, I don't know if I'd be okay with.
Okay.
I just know that there is an investigation involving human trafficking, and that's the bigger picture of all this.
Because you were interviewed by law enforcement about human trafficking.
Yes.
Okay. And it's local law enforcement, not FBI.
I can't say for certain.
Okay.
I can't say that.
All right. Anything you want to add?
The only thing I would add is that I just hope the world lives in the world of kindness. This has been a really crazy experience. Certainly I'm a victim of circumstance. When you think about something like this, most people think meth labs and prostitution happens kind of in the fringe of society, but it is prevalent everywhere, and it is heartbreaking to know. And, the only thing I would add is that, I appreciate you having interest in this. I hope that it reveals that dark underbelly of society and that people don't suffer. It's a unfortunate world that we live in when these things kind of go. And again, people may know about it, but they're apathetic. I don't know. It's been a very interesting ride, and one that I didn't ask to take. But I just kind of want to carry on with my life and do the good work. So that's that.
Yeah, and I'll go on the record, too, saying that, I invited you on the show months ago. I think it was months ago, right? And you haven't been pestering me to come on. Yeah. I've been pestering you, so it's not like you're out here trying to create an issue or make a point to the world. So I can testify to that.
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, and I appreciate you making mention of that because, I didn't, it's just gotten so crazy. And again, this is something I just, you have to go through some soul searching to kind of first say, geez, is there anything, does this have any value? And I apologize for putting you off.
No, that's fine.
It wasn't anything personal. I know you're a very well-respected journalist on these aspects, and we're talking now. And there was a time that I did have some concerns about my safety,
right?
And it wasn't so much directly from maybe an obvious source, but it's the people that follow Breitbart and the alt-right movement, the extremists on that side. God only knows how they could view me. I'm no Ed Snowden. I'm not a whistleblower. I'm just a guy that victim of circumstance, and you do have to look at the larger scope of this. I never sought out media. Everyone has contacted me, and in some ways I was a little surprised at some news sources that had tracked down my cell phone number and called me directly. But it got to the point where I said, listen, if it's important enough, all I can do is stand on integrity and tell the facts.
Excellent. Lawrence Curtis, thank you so much. If anything comes up, get a hold of me and we'll put you right on the air. If there's any kind of danger or threats or anything like that, we'll put you right on the air and make a record of it. Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ed, what I'd rather talk about is maybe some things to inspire people about nature and maybe anti-captivity campaigns and get people to appreciate and respect the wildlife a little more. I'd be more than happy to discuss that. I don't know if that's the forum in which you talk, but I'd be totally keen on that.
I'll talk about anything interesting. We'll have you back on that, too. Lawrence Curtis, thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay, Lawrence Curtis, Steve Bannon, porn and meth house, and human trafficking. I think we got a big story there, guys. Get the record out there. Lawrence Curtis, and this is regarding, he was the tenant who moved in after Steve Bannon. He says that both Steve Bannon was in there, the ex-wife was in there, the ex-wife's boyfriend was in there, and also, too, the ex-wife's boyfriend did time. He went to prison for drugs, and the ex-wife was visiting there and tried to sneak him in a phone, I think, or some marijuana, and she got arrested as well. So a lot of these things are totally on the record. There's police reports, all kinds of things like that. Fascinating interview. Thank you so much, Lawrence Curtis. And now a word from our sponsors. Archival Revival, the Christian Film Archive, is currently paying for vintage Christian films. They are dedicated to preserving and restoring classic Christian films and media. So if you have an original prints, negatives, or other film elements of classic Christian films, or you have audio recording masters for classic Christian record albums, they want to buy them from you. So email archival.revival@gmail.com, and they're going to make you an offer. Archival Revival wants to preserve these classic Christian films so that they continue saving people for years. These films have brought people to salvation. They want to continue that. Their staff has decades of experience in handling and preserving of film elements, and they utilize the very best climate-controlled film storage facilities around the world. Contact them today at archival.revival@gmail.com. If there's someone you know has these prints, negatives, recording masters, or other materials from vintage Christian films, you can check out their blog at archivalrevival.blogspot.com. Now, just so you understand, Archival Revival wants to pay you for these films. So you can look in your church attic, in the church basement. If you have a friend who runs a Christian youth ministry or these youth vacation Bible study camps, they have these old films in those big metal containers, 16 millimeter and 35 millimeter. Archival Revival wants to buy them from you. So this is a sponsor that actually wants to give you money. And all you have to do is contact them, tell them what you have. If you're in the UK or Ireland or Africa, these films are all over the world, and they're gathering dust, and they're going to deteriorate if they don't get into the hands of Archival Revival. So that's archival.revival@gmail.com, or the blog spot is archivalrevival.blogspot.com. Don't forget, this show is brought to you by pscoco.com. Phoebe Sod is an independent curator with the Cocoa Exchange. The Cocoa Exchange is formerly known as Dove Chocolate Discoveries, and they make the finest silky smooth chocolate because the products start with the best cocoa beans, which are tested for quality and flavor by expert technicians. The Cocoa Exchange offers not just premium chocolates, but anything from sauces and spices to brownie and cake mixes, and even coffee and martini mixes. If you wish to treat yourself or someone you love to a sweet and tasty gift, then the Cocoa Exchange is the brand for you. So you go to pscoco.com, you click on the Shop Now button. You can see all their beautiful chocolates. You can order it right now tonight. It could be in your mailbox in a couple of days. Or if you want to get into the chocolate business, you want to be a chocolatier just like Phoebe Sod, you can click the Contact Us button, and you can learn how to get your own website, go into the cocoa chocolate business, and sell chocolate and make a little bit of money there. Remember, all these shows on Awake are brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. But you also do all the kind of different services for you. An online dating service investigation. It's called an online infidelity investigation. And that's where you give us your husband or your boyfriend, your girlfriend's email address, and we trace it back to their online dating websites, and we return a list of all the dating sites that email is registered to. We can expand on that investigation and trace it back to porn sites, escort service sites, swinger sites, even gambling websites, and even prescription drug websites. If you think your ex-husband or something is addicted to prescription medication or involved in a extreme online pornography addiction, we can produce a report for you that you can use in court. Adoption investigations. If you want to locate your birth parents or your birth child you gave away for adoption, we can do adoption investigations for you. Asset searches for you. Locate bank accounts, hidden assets, hidden properties, hidden income, all different kinds of services in the asset search investigation. Email tracing. If you need to locate or identify somebody from just an email address, we can do an email trace investigation for you. And all kinds of digital forensics, computer and cell phone digital forensics, where we can recover deleted content from an email or a hard drive and produce a report for you that you can use in court. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can contact me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com.